Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Final Tackle podcast, and we are joined by, you can say he's a hard-hitting forward. He plays for Huddersfield Giants. He has had a stint in the NRL with a few clubs. He got off the nudie run in the Super League on round one. His name is James Gavet. Thank you very much for joining us today, and how are you going today? This episode is brought to you by our proud sponsor, Gold Coast Trading Cards. They are an authorised TLA trading card dealer, and they are the NRL collector's choice. From box breaks to individual cards, they sell thousands of them from the 1960s up until recent 2020s and into the future 2021s coming out next year. Be sure to get all of your NRL trading card needs at Gold Coast Trading Cards.
Yeah, good. It's obviously I'm over in England at the moment, northern part of England, in a place called Brighouse, which isn't far from Huddersfield. And it's pretty nice weather over here at the moment. It's 12:30 in the afternoon, so yeah, the sun's at its highest and still a bit chilly, but it's the best day we've had so far this year.
Yeah, nice. Well, I mean, compared to the snow that you guys just recently had, you were, doing preseason in the snow. It's definitely a welcome change by the sounds of it. What was it like doing that preseason in the snow?
It's definitely something different. As international players, we often have this running kind of joke where it's like, oh, would you rather be doing preseason in the Aussie heat or in the snow over here? And we haven't really made our minds up yet. So
because they're both the extreme sort of thing.
Yeah, it's either one end of the spectrum or the other. So it's something we've kind of you have to get used to. I'm fortunate enough to have come over a year earlier, so we didn't have snow then. But
you adjusted to the cold type of weather.
Yeah, to some of the cold, and then obviously the snow hit different.
Yeah, I'm sure it did. But also mentioning you came over a year early, that was when COVID hit. What was it like, going from Australia, the NRL, all that jazz, and then going over and, not only is it your first season, possibly your first, time living in the UK, and that clusterfuck, for lack of a better term. How did you handle it, and how did your family go with it?
Yeah, it was a massive eye-opener. Me and my wife have come over, and we're both originally from New Zealand. Mm-hmm. She's from a small town called Rotorua, yep. And I grew up in Auckland. And then even though New Zealand and Australia are a bit different, it's still pretty similar. And so coming over here was a massive change for us, and I thought it was going to be a big challenge, not only on the footy field, but just, adapting to everything around us, different food brands and, different accents. Every 2 miles in whichever direction you go, there's a different accent. So, it's been good to finally get our bearings and get to know what's what over here. So I think it does normally take you about a year to settle into things. So we are, we're still learning. It's still been a big learning curve, and we're taking it with each stride day by day. But, I'd like to, I feel happy to say that we're almost like one of the locals now. We've been welcomed by everyone around us, so whether at work or just in our local neighborhoods. It's been good.
Yeah, that's good to hear. And because it could have gone the other way. It could have been unsettled and vice sort of thing. But no, it's good to hear that. And brain fighting hard. Speaking of COVID, in the sense of the Super League season that's just kicked off, you guys are doing a hub, for lack of a better term. It's one round. Each round is every team plays at a set stadium. Round 1 was at Emerald Headingley. Next round coming up is at Totally Wicked. What are your thoughts on how the Super League are handling that? Because I think it's great.
Yeah, it is good. I think whatever um, actions they do take, with it, however extreme it might even get, if we can keep our game going, obviously, then that'll be best for all of us, not just the players and staff, but including the fans. We really, all of us obviously really want to get back to how things once were. And especially, some of us new recruits, I only got a couple of games in before with, full crowd, 100% capacity or attendance and capacity before this whole COVID thing hit. So I haven't really gotten to witness what it was like, in the glory days of Super League, and seeing a grand final, or even just going to every other stadium and witnessing what their fans are like. So, yeah, I think the Super League have handled it really well. RFL have definitely got all the owners and the CEOs to stand together and reach an agreement where we can continue to grow our game, even if it is with only our coaches and trainers cheering us on at the stadiums.
I was going to say, do you as a player notice a difference? Obviously, minus the fact there's no people in the stands, but do you notice a difference in the performance possibly of the team, like when there's no crowd compared to when there is a crowd?
Yeah, we were talking about that the other day. You obviously feed off the crowd and the energy they can give you or not give you. So,
yeah.
it can work in your favor or against you. So, but it is, at the end of the day, we are entertainers, and it is a show that we put on for the public, and with the different types of characters that you can have in the game. In the NRL, you've got Fergie doing backflips, and Mundine used to do that, and that was some great showmanship. Which, love them or hate them, you want to keep watching that stuff. And over here, we've got plenty of characters too, and Connie O'Rell and Kenny Edwards, and you just, you've got your lovers, people that love them, and then people that just want to see Kenny Edwards get smashed. But it's all a part of the atmosphere.
It's all a part of loving the game as a whole.
Of loving the game, yeah. And so missing the odd, chant, or the big oohs and ahs of the fans, it can it can get pretty almost awkward in those raw silences between gameplay and during the game. It's just, you can hear everything everyone says, and it's definitely different.
Oh, for sure. And obviously, touching on your time in the NRL, in the NRL, you did play for a few clubs: the Bulldogs, Tigers, Broncos, Warriors, and Knights. Your longest stint was with the Warriors. First of all, what was it like getting your first grade debut in the NRL as a whole with the Bulldogs? What was the week like leading up to it, and everything involved for you?
It was surreal, which is the answer that you would get most of the time. But I often hear people talk about, it was unforgettable, or it went so fast that you couldn't actually remember anything. And that was me, the second one.
Yep.
It was, I didn't play for very long, but because I had a bad start to that season through injury, and the Bulldogs were on fire that year, they made the grand final, and they fell short. But I was thinking, I started behind the 8 ball here, and then they were all playing really well, and I never thought I would actually get in the mix. And then when I think someone stood down or something, and got injured or something, I ended up getting pulled up last minute. And ready or not, you just, you got to take it with both hands. And it went that quick. It was crazy. But all I remember is that we were down, and we came back with a win against a strong
the Broncos.
Broncos side. Yeah, a strong Broncos side. And I was it was in the big lights, and I played 20s before the NYC
Yeah,
and
you did. Yeah.
State Cup and that, but nothing could compare to
The
that.
pace
And
of the
the
NRL.
pace and seeing so many familiar faces that you had only ever seen on TV. Coming up against Ben Hannant and Sammy Thaiday and that, it's like, wow, these are legit names here. There's no more mucking around.
Yeah.
And
It's no
so,
more watching
yeah,
them on TV. It's I'm doing it with the best of them now.
Yeah, you're face to face with them, and you got to give your best, and you got to give them the respect that they've obviously earned, but then you've got to bring, whatever your flavor may be. And I was very grateful to Desi and the Dogs for giving me that opportunity that year.
Yeah, for sure. And you spent the longest tenure or stint, you could say, with the Warriors. What was it like, you could say, more or less going back home? As you said, you are from Auckland yourself. So what was it like, going back home and playing rugby league for the Warriors?
It was good. It was. I've comparing all my time at the different clubs that I've been to. They all had their own special thing, and like that I would never take away from them. But it was always going to be something different, playing in front of my family and friends and my parents and my kids.
And you could do that on a weekly, almost every 2 to 3 weeks, with home games for sure as well. It's not just fly them over every few weeks. It's they can come to the games as regular as you play them at home.
Exactly. And I do have family in Sydney and in Brisbane, and that would come and watch my games. But to have my old man there, and even my mom, even though she's to this day, she still doesn't understand the game. Just hearing them cheer for me and having my son, obviously just soak it all in as a kid would, was always going to be something special, win or lose. And, obviously we didn't win too much over those at the Warriors, but
the ones you did would have been extra special for you.
Extra special. And and then there's also the familiar smells and everything else that comes with that homey feel, and mum's cooking also. So
nice. Obviously, Huddersfield is where you're currently at, as we just mentioned. And where do you see yourself? Do you see yourself once you retire? That is, whether you get a shot back in the NRL or whether you finish up in the UK. Do you see yourself moving back to Australia or NZ, or do you see yourself possibly staying in the UK for a while?
Well, that's something. It's funny you mentioned that. That's something me and my wife have kind of been tossing up. She's half Tongan, half English, and which means she's a dual passport holder, New Zealand and England. And Great Britain. So, because we are married, I'm eligible to apply for citizenship after a couple of years.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, by proxy, and so we can actually end up staying here for however long we want.
And if you ever decide to come back, you could be like, right, let's go back and move back, sort of thing.
Exactly. Yeah, and I was born in Sydney, but grew up in Auckland. So I'm a dual citizen of Australia and New Zealand. So, and I've enjoyed my time living in Sydney and in Brisbane. But it's pretty much what the wife wants to do. It's just cut the bull.
It's that, but it's also which place would be like the most relaxed for you guys as well.
Yeah. She's I took her on holiday to the GC and Brizzy, and she loved it. During the summer, but I was like, holiday mode, everyone's going to love it at Gold Coast.
in holiday mode, yeah.
But, and I was like, and all we did was, spend time with loved ones, drink and partying at that time. So, she wants to witness that, moving either back to Niue or GC Brizzy, somewhere near the beach. down the East Coast there. Or there's three extremes here. There's that, or move to a farm where her brother lives in New Zealand, or like around there, like the countryside, or stay over here in the cold. And yeah,
is that Steve, the Oklahoma City player, or is that not the brother-in-law that you're talking about? Because that would be cool. Two professional sports people, linking up, but two totally different sports.
Yeah, well, he's currently at
Pelicans,
New Orleans. Yeah, he's at the Pelicans.
I did my best to do some research, and Wikipedia says that you're his brother-in-law, so I was like, I should probably try and figure out a way to bring that up.
Yeah. Well, he does own that farm, but another brother runs it because Steve is overdoing his thing in the States. But yeah, we don't know if it would be at that farm or just somewhere around the corner where we would just stay close to her family and in between both of our families. So there's three different lifestyles here. She's pretty much gonna she's gonna pick from.
She will pick and you'll support the decision.
Yeah, and supply the Visa debit card and whatnot.
Yeah, no, all good. And obviously we just mentioned your brother-in-law who plays in the NBA, which is an achievement in itself. You've made a massive achievement by playing international rugby league for Samoa. What was it like getting to represent your heritage and play for Samoa?
It was real emotional for me to finally pull on that jersey, because knowing that my grandparents migrated to New Zealand back in the 50s or 60s or whatever it was, they were one of the first waves to come over, Pacific waves to come to New Zealand. And so both of my parents are New Zealand born and bred. And so we haven't really had much to do with, actually growing up and knowing the culture back to front. But, we still were immersed in being Samoan and, being around it, being spoken, and the culture, which is still pretty watered down in New Zealand. That was cool, but to actually, we went and played my very first game for Samoa. We went and played in Samoa, and we stayed there for
that was against Fiji, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was against Fiji, and to actually get to know and see how much that we were respected and adored over there, and just the type of living situations that they are in. And where my grandparents actually, the villages that they migrated from, it was massive for me to see, because there were just so many things we had taken for granted growing up in the land of milk and honey of New Zealand or Australia. And, it just makes you almost like disgusted with yourself sometimes. How we would whinge about like certain things, like, oh, this for dinner again. It's like, well,
it's like, you
don't have to go out and catch what you have to eat for dinner. And so it was humbling, but it was an honor and a privilege that I couldn't even put into words and explain at the time. So
would you be putting your name up for? Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt, but would you be putting your name up for Samoa for the Rugby League World Cup this year, possibly?
Yeah, hopefully. I know a lot of players that I've spoken to. No, that's fine. I know a lot of players that I've spoken to, other Samoan players, especially over here. I've asked them if they're going to try and go for it. And I think that whole, the stigma behind like, oh, I don't want to come off as I want to go for it and then fall short. But I've already told people that I'm actually aiming for it, or I don't get selected.
Yeah.
I'd
Well, I mean,
like to
at
just
least you
be
can
out in
try
the
your
open.
best, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not ashamed to say, yeah, I'm gonna
It's like, yeah, I
fucking
fell
aim for
short.
that.
You know, it's I fell short, but I know I did my best. You know.
Yeah, exactly. And I've asked them, and they've kind of kept their. I can tell that they're wanting to be selected, but
Yeah.
they've kept that close to their cards close to them, and which you know is totally fine. But yeah, I whenever I'm asked, I'm out in the open to say, yeah, I actually want to give it a dig. I've missed out on 2 World Cups due to injury, and where I actually did get the call up, but back then I was 27 and 23, so things are a lot different now, and I'm a whole world away from where.
Well, it's being hosted in
national
the UK,
teams.
so you're already there.
Yeah, but normally the national teams would normally be picked, whether it be Kiwis, Aussie, Tonga, Samoa, Fiji. They look at the NRL first, and which makes it even harder. But then
Yeah.
I look at that as a challenge. Like, okay,
Exactly.
well, if I do make it from here, then no one can, fault me for my efforts and whether I deserve to be there or not. So, yeah,
Exactly.
fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, and even if you don't, you can at least say you've managed to already represent Samoa regardless, which is an amazing accomplishment, even in itself. During your time in the NRL, which team and also which individual, not necessarily doesn't have to be an individual from a certain team, so separate, were the toughest to go up against?
There's a few, but I think I get asked this quite a bit, like who was the hardest to tackle, or who was the hardest to play against.
I just mean, yeah, just in general sort of thing.
I find that the toughest players are the ones that are just have this undying attitude.
They just don't stop until the final sign.
Yeah, they just don't stop. And having been to all these different clubs, guys like, Aiden Tolman isn't the biggest dude, and he isn't the most talented of players, but he just would give you 100% every game. And the difference between his good game and his bad game is like there's such a small difference between them, because he's so consistent, and it's all based off hard work.
Like, exactly. Sorry to interrupt. I was at the Sharks-Raiders game the other week because he's, as I'm sure you know, just signed with the Sharks, and the Sharks did lose, but it was almost a Tolman's got the ball again. Tolman's got the ball again. Tolman's made a tackle again. He's just he'd at least have one run every set and at least 2 tackles every opposing set. It's like you were saying, just doesn't give up.
Yeah. So guys like the relentless guys. I say Aiden Tolman because he's more of an unsung hero. Everyone talks about Gal. Everyone talks about Sam Burgess, and yes, they were hard to play against. But there are a lot of players that have been overlooked that are just as tough, but just don't get their accolades. Maybe because they don't make an Origin team or have a Kiwis jumper. Simon Mannering, he'll always be one that I hated playing against, and I'd love to play. I like to play with those type of guys where it's just, you just know you're in for a big day going up against them because they're relentless.
Yeah, sometimes it's like, I don't want to go to work because it's my opposing player.
Yeah, whereas the big boys, so you have like Sam Cass, Mose Masoya, the Burgess twins, these types of boys, is like, okay, well, you're big. I feel like I'm big, but they're way bigger than me. They dwarf me.
Yep.
But then to me, it's like, well, I give it my best, go handy. They're always going to be hard to stop for anyone, but we'll wear them down, and eventually they're not going to do this for 80 minutes. Whereas you run into guys like Aiden Tolman or Simon Mannering, or even Gal.
They may not put hard hits on you, but they'll hit you almost every tackle
every
you take.
time. And then to the point where, when I was fresh, it was like, yeah, I'm kind of winning the battles. Then I start dwindling down. And then by the end of my stint, where it's like, I normally come off after like maybe say 20 minutes, then I'm like a piece of paper to run
Wheezing.
through. Yeah. And then I come off knowing that, oh, fuck, they got me. That last run, he found his front through me. That's why I got subbed off. I come off and watch from the bench. They're still going the same pace as they were in the first minute. And they'll finish that half. And I'm like, oh, man, I guess I'm just I guess that's just something I don't have. And they've got, that's their special secret power.
Okay. And speaking of powers, if you could have a superpower, what would it be? That.
Oh. Yeah. Strength, super strength. Yeah. I've always preferred the Hulk over like Thor and Iron Man and all of that.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, no, awesome.
Yeah.
And obviously you just mentioned the toughest opponents and whatnot, but who would be the funniest teammate and just in general throughout your time playing so far? And what would be the funniest sledge you've heard on field, whether it's been directed at you or you've heard been sprayed at someone? Just what's the funniest one you've heard?
There are so many different funny characters in the game that I've played with. It's hard to name one. At the Tigers, there's a guy named Andrew Vella.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he played NRL, but he brightened my day there. At the moment, at the Giants, it's a guy named James Cunningham.
Mm-hmm.
At the Warriors, Charlie Gubb. He's really witty. Broncos, Joe Offengawe. He was just, I don't know if it was because he was a kid when I was there, but he was just always doing something silly. At the Knights, believe it or not, Herman Isse is really funny, but he's not outwardly funny. So as soon as you break down that barrier, then he says some crack up things. But the sledge that takes the cup that stands out for me was we lined up against and Ali Lautiti.
Yeah. Yep.
He was pretty funny. We lined up against Melbourne once, and we're at the scrum.
Yep. That's always in the scrum. It's always in the scrum.
And like it was a pretty even matched game at that point. And the Storm come over, and it's me, Bully, Isaac Luke, and I think Jacob Lillyman.
Yep. Was this for the Warriors?
For the Warriors.
Yep.
And I had been wearing the same pair of boots that were run down like nobody's business for like a good, I think, a year and a half maybe.
Yep.
And so they were ripped out the side and out the front. But my thing has always been like, not look good, play good, but hey, if you feel good, then you play good, no matter how you look. And so they were busted out the side and out the front. So I always had them taped.
Yep.
Which was, it was something you would see over like electric, lines on the street. And one had pink laces because the laces had ripped, and my sister had some leftover laces. So one had pink laces, one had white laces. Jesse Bromwich comes over to the scrum and goes, "Oh, where did you get those ones, cuz?" And it literally, it's not the actual sledge and how like witty it might be, but it was how close the game was, and it was intense, and we were going head to head, and both scrums turned and looked at my shoes.
Boots, and you just laughed from the
everyone paused and went quiet, and Cam Smith, he just went, "What the fuck are those?" And Bully being he's a clown too. He looked over, as serious as he was as well. He looked over and was like, "Cuz, what the fuck are those?" And so both their team were laughing at me, and my team were disappointed in me. I was like,
but that would have also helped break the tension. That would have also helped break the tension of that moment in the game as well.
Yeah, it was good, but that's that it sure did. But as far as Let's go, I think everyone gives it how. Well, sorry, there's always some good ones, but that moment stood out for me because it was like time. It stood still. Yeah, so Jesse Bromwich, you bastard. I owe you one.
Fair enough. And is there a sledge that is memorable for you that you heard been given to someone else on the field, whether it's in the scrum or not, that's not necessarily directed at you?
Yeah, someone told Charlie Gubb once, I can't remember what game it was or who we played, but it was in Perth. And we were coming over to the scrum or the tap or something, and someone said that he's got some really long hammies or something. They spoke about him. They're like, look at the hammies on him. And it's because we used to mock him because he's got no ass.
Yeah.
And so like it's his back connects to his hammies. And it was funny to hear that. We hadn't even said that out loud, but the other team had noticed it, and someone ran over and was just like, look at the hammies on you. And we and even Charlie had no comeback to that.
Oh wow. That's so funny. Oh, geez, just trying to think of any more topics. What advice would you give to any youngsters who, would like to make it in the big league one day?
I've given different pieces of advice over the years, but now looking back in, like with my journey, I'd say just run your race. Obviously, you've got to train hard and make a lot of sacrifices in that. But for me, for example, I was in the NRL for about 10 years, and I didn't even end up playing 100 games. But the year I started and came in, your first thought is, I want to be a 300-game legend and play this many games for the Kiwis or New South Wales or Origin or whatever it might be. But because things didn't go to plan, a lot of things were my fault. Poor preparation and poor decisions, but then there are other things that I couldn't control, where
like injuries and whatnot.
Injuries and maybe not making the team because he prefers one player over the other. But I used to look at that like, oh flip, man, I really wanted to at least get 100 games or whatever it might have been. But now I see it as, it's still a successful career. I stayed, especially when the stats come out about the percentages of how long people stay in the NRL or how many people get picked.
Well, these days it's like 3 to 5 years max.
Yeah. And so to know that I stayed in for 10 years, and even though if you average that, it's like I played like less than 10 games a season. And so I look at that as a success in itself, to know that, okay, well, I hung in there, even though there were whole years that I didn't actually play a game. And no one was with me in that rehab chamber for 6 months, just me and the trainer or me and the physio. And I stuck to my guns and I hung in there. So don't get me wrong, being a Cam Smith, you should aim for that.
Yeah,
you should
aim high,
to try and play,
but also don't be disappointed.
Games. Yeah, exactly. And whether your career lasts, a year in the NRL or 20 years, or maybe not even crack it, it's just like run your race and just do your best. And if things don't happen, because sometimes opportunities fall in your lap, sometimes people just miss it by that much. And there are so many guys that were better than me that chose the wrong way and to go down different paths. That was their bad. But then there were guys that actually did everything right. Professionalism was way better than me. They actually worked harder than me, and they still didn't get a crack, but they didn't give up. So you never know what's going to happen. Just make sure that when that chapter finally does close, that like that Rocky movie, he says, make sure that there's nothing left in the basement. So nothing, no regrets. Leave the game with no regrets.
Yeah, fair. Yeah. Honestly, that's great. And last bit of topic I'd say is, do you have any words for the Giants fans for this season?
Yeah, I can only compare this year to last year, and as far as I'm concerned, we're on the right track. And I'm not just saying that. Last year, obviously, there are some things that we could have fixed up ourselves, but then there were some, some things that no one could have foretold, like
COVID.
Coronavirus.
I don't think anyone could.
No one, no crystal ball showed us that. So,
but you did come out guns blazing at the start of that season.
Yeah, still no excuses aside, it didn't hit us any different to how it hit St. Helens. So, if I'm comparing how our attitude was and how closely knit our club is now, and how we're moving forward and growing, and I think we've come light years ahead from where we once were. So keep the faith and make sure that you keep watching us. And I know we didn't turn out in that first round what we had planned on doing, and you guys would have been expecting, but don't lose hope just yet. We've definitely got something special lined up for you guys this year.
And I mean, as they say, it's only one round. You can't really, one round doesn't mean. I mean, it does mean everything, but it also doesn't mean anything in the long run of things, given it's like a 30-round season sort of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Which is that whole thing. Just hang in there with us. We'll do you guys proud.
Awesome.